This is part 2 in the video series to make this beautiful shawl, and in this part we're going to take our completed motifs and we're going to block them so that they look like this in order to be able to pick up along the edges and knit them to begin the first row of the shawl. So let's get started. You're going to need a little bit of a delicate wash. I use my all-natural Rapture, and I put a couple of drops of it into a little spray bottle with some distilled water. When I'm partially blocking pieces before an actual garment is finished, I think mist blocking is perfectly fine. So here's the piece. I'm put it onto a blocking board, and I'm going to mist block it by just spraying it. Okay. If you feel it necessary, you can spray both sides. Okay, and then we're going to pin it out. And what we want to make sure of is that these end of rows are parallel to each other, and know the fact that this is going to dip down. I'll show you one that's already been blocked so you can see what I mean. See how we've got our parallel, not parallel, I guess they're on the same line, so it's not really parallel, but they're on the same horizon line, let's say. Okay, and this is going to dip down. So you want to make sure that you pin them that way, since that's the way they will organically be when you stretch it. Okay, so we'll start with our two end points, and then I want to make sure that the first end of rows stays on that same line. Okay, and now what I'll do is start pinning out, and when I'm pinning, I like to make sure that I start in the center and then work out into midpoints from there. It's how I keep things symmetrical. So we'll pin the first picot, and I don't actually pin, I pull on the picot, but then I pin just above it so that I'm not stretching it out or doing anything weird to it either. So then I'll find a midpoint here on this line. This one's starting to get weird, so I will pin it again. Okay, and then there may come a point when you need to do the midpoint in those end of rows also. Once we start stretching the bottom here, it starts making this, there we go. So we'll get the midpoint over here. And you can see we're starting to get that shape that you recognize from the edging on the shawl. And one thing that may happen, and you wouldn't have realized this before it starts blocking out, is that your picots could mistakenly have turned in on themselves, like gone in like that. And if they do, you can just pick it back out with your pin. So if they don't look like this and they look like they've almost disappeared, it's possible that they got flipped inside. I don't have an example to show you here, but it has happened to me, so I wanted to point it out for you as well. Okay, so there we go. That's how it looks blocked. And so now you want to let this dry, and when it's dry, you could have woven in your ends beforehand, but I'm going to do it after it's dry. And then you want to do this to all of your motifs, and then at that point we can pick up and knit into these end of rows to start the first row of the shawl. Okay, our motifs are knit, they are blocked, the ends are woven in, and now we're going to use a contrast color to pick up along these edge of rows, the edge that has the end of rows. Then we're going to cast on in the middle and pick up along the edge at the other end of the rows. And we're going to start, okay, so there's 12 rows here. We're going to pick up 6 stitches in that edge. So that means we're going to pick up in every other end of row. So you're going to insert your knitting needle and pull a loop of yarn through. Now, for me, I find it easiest to use both the tail and the working yarn for a couple of stitches to secure the tail, as well as get not have to weave in the ends later. So we're going to use both pieces to pick up the next stitch. Skip a row, pick up and knit in the next end of row, skip a row, pick up and knit in the next end of row, and you want to do that until you have approximately 6 stitches. I don't like to work into one loop. I want to try to grab 2 loops just to give a more secure join. So now we have our 6 stitches, and I'm going to with my left hand, make a twist in the yarn on my left hand thumb and put that loop on the needle and count that as 1 cast on stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and then we'll come over here and we're going to knit evenly 6 stitches, pick up and knit 6 stitches evenly across the opposite end of those same rows. So we'll start here, pick up and knit 1, and again try to grab 2 strands of yarn, not 1, not 3 if you have to. I mean, do what you have to do, but in general I like to try to pick up with 2 strands of that end of row. I don't think I grabbed those evenly, so I'm going to pull it back out. And I'm glad I got to show you that, because it's perfectly okay for you if you don't recognize where your end of rows are. That happens. See, and because of the blocking, I didn't recognize my end of rows. I should be starting here. So I'm going to pick up and knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Much better. Okay, so I'll set this down now so you can see what one motif will look like when it's picked up. Okay, and then from here you're just going to continue on. You don't have to do anything between the motifs, and you don't have to worry about the picots. They'll work themselves out when we get to the shawl, and I'll show you that in a second. So you're just going to go from picking up 6 stitches in that section of the end of rows to now picking up 6 stitches on the first side of the next motif's end of row. So just push the picots to the back, pick up 6 stitches, or pick up and knit 6 stitches, okay, and then we're going to cast on 6 stitches in the middle and wrap a loop around your thumb and slide it on. Okay, we've got 6 stitches cast on in the center, and now in the opposite end of rows we're going to pick up and knit 6 stitches. And I'm going to take a look here, kind of eyeball it and make sure that I've got all 12 rows showing so that I can recognize where I'm going to pick up and knit my 6 stitches evenly across. Okay, so now I've got 2 motifs with the first row picked up and knit across. And they still look like it's not going to work out, and I get that, but so let me just show you. This is what it will end up looking like. See, we picked up across here, cast on, and then picked up, and then we picked up across here, cast on, and picked up. So go ahead and repeat what we just did for all of your motifs, and in the next section I'll show you how we do this beautiful and super easy lace stitch pattern.